Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on a Monday, June 16th at 12:17 p.m. So I like to look at this chart a lot. Y'all know about that at this point, I would imagine. This is the DXY. It's an index of the dollar relative to varying other currencies, primarily the euro and the yen, but it gives you a nice overview of where the hell things are. Now, why do I say in this stream that you know the train left the station in November of 2024? It's because it did, because we had our interaction with this line back in November of 2024. And this line is at 107.35. And that's a big line because that goes back historically as well. Very historic line. The 103.81 is a historic line also. But this interaction here is exactly what occurred back in 2022. It was a breakthrough with weakness, and you had a wick. And obviously, we didn't have, it's the first interaction with the 107.35. So it's not like, oh, it's going to hold as resistance. But it turns out it did. And it wicked through, then it didn't follow through because this was a full rejection and a failed breakout attempt. And then it obviously got completely rejected. This 107.35 line has great history because there's nothing that held above it. Everything is ultimately rejected, all dating back to the 70s, including our incredible breakout in the 80s. Breakout, rejected, breakout, rejected, breakout, double breakout, obviously, between 2020 and 2022 and 2024. And that leaves us where we are. And on the monthly, you can see a couple of wicks through, a couple of candles through, but ultimately rejected to the downside 2 times. And now we're finally getting a push meaningfully to the downside for the first time since 2020. We find ourselves to the bottom of the weekly 100 SMA. Haven't had interaction with the 200 SMA in the weekly in a long time, especially from the top side coming down. The last time we had an interaction with the weekly 200 on the DXY was in 2003. Maybe some food for thought for where we are right about now. Because these cycles, and this is from a weekly standpoint, it's not even like we're looking at a higher time frame chart. Look at all this data and information we get just from the weekly standpoint. Oh, we're going back all the way to .com 2000, and we're finally starting to roll through this 100 SMA. The last time we had a meaningful roll through the 100 SMA just to start interacting with the 200 SMA, obviously, was back in '03 also. And then we didn't touch. It's not like we attacked the 100 or the 200 on the weekly from the top side since then, because it was a bull market from 2008 to 2022. A dollar bull market is the antithesis of what the general public thinks has occurred. It is what occurred, and it is why everyone is wrong with regard to capital management, because we're finally potentially on the other side of one of the largest, or actually the longest dollar bull market in the post $71. Because obviously prior to 1971, there was a different dollar, it was a different dollar product, different dollar instrument, a different dollar asset. But look at that. Look at the duration. I even have those old duration um, inspectors. 168 bars, 112 days, 5,000. I'm sorry. 5,112 days from trough to trough, or bottom to bottom, to 1985 into the 90s. And then obviously the next one, trough to trough, 4,748 days. And now most recently, actually, that's it's a speculative, but I would say if we get trough to trough, maybe we see 7,000 days, because clearly from bottom trough to peak, and obviously we're still speculatively peak until we get further meaningful down. And maybe what I would suspect is a rejection of the 50 SMA, 100 SMA. We don't get that bullish cross. Maybe we see 7,000 plus days for a trough to trough or a bottom to bottom on the DXY. That's the kind of cyclicality we're in for. And that would be one heck of an experience for risk assets globally. Okay, so as is the theme, not of late, but it's been a strong theme. Y'all should be done by now acquiring most assets, albeit Aerodrome was something that I did acquire the other day at a relatively decent price on the weekly chart. So that's how new these types of assets are. Look, this is the weekly chart, and then you look at the DXY, and you're like, all right, we're going back to the back in time. You have so much history to look at information on, and then you look at brand new assets, and you're like, what the hell am I looking at here? So the weekly chart is something I would inspect though, and nothing anything less will drive you nuts. And it's too short term. Even if there isn't enough data and information, it'll still drive you nuts. I don't unless you have a moving average, maybe because this is significant, but that's there on the weekly as well, with the 10 SMA just above. On the daily, you got the 50 SMA and the 100 SMA. All right, fine. The chart's new enough, so this relatively low time frame, the daily chart, is going to give us a bit of decent information because we pushed through that resistance, and that is pretty much smooth sailing for an unknown amount of time. Uncharted territory. Last time we broke through the 50 SMA was in September of 2024, and that was a different economic conditions back then. Anywho, it's a different story, different narrative. I mean, Coinbase literally was out there today talking about Aerodrome. I mean, that's remarkable marketing. So let's find that. Let's look at that. I mean, look at that. That's 2 hours ago. Get boosted airdrop from Airdrop. Nice, that's, we've talked about that. You all know about that flight school program, and that's exactly why we talked about it. But now they're actively marketing it. So that's very interesting price action. It's like 25% already. 30, about 33%. All right, cool. What does up 33% mean? Folks take those types of statements in the wrong kind of context. It's irrelevant what you're up if you have no intention or capacity to sell whatsoever. It means nothing. It's misleading. It invokes an emotional response, and it's probably not the most appropriate thing for me to say, given that's not the response that I want people to have. Um, if you want, it's not for me to talk about acquisition. It's for me to say what I did, and that's why I did what I did. That's why I bought when I bought, because I saw this green line, nice levels of support. One, two, three levels of support. Breakdown. Now it's a breakout retest, and this is actually the trifecta of bullish confluence, ladies and gentlemen. This is something we've talked about for a long time. Over here, so you have the breakout, the retest, and now you want the higher high. And technically, we already have the higher high, but there's a level of resistance right above. So if the higher high is right about there at about 95 cents, that is one heck of a decent comfort zone for price action for a continuation to the upside. If you get a rejection on the 100 or the 50, it's going to depreciate. But if you have a push through it, that is a decent amount of confluence suggesting further appreciation. Not only is it a break of the MAs, it's also a trifecta of bullish confluence. Breakout, retest, higher, high. And plus, we all know about the bonus, the flight school, which is nice discount. So I bought at what, 60 cents? And with the 25% with this, if Arrow's on, he'd appreciate this kind of thought. So you get the 1.25% boost, you get the 25% boost with the VE Arrow Maxi Relay, and then obviously you get Flight School, whatever this comes in at the beginning of next month. Hard flight departure. Nope. 6-4. Nope. We gotta wait for the departure. That's next month. And that's going to be 30% at least. was updated 9 minutes ago. So you get 30% on top of your 20. So I calculated at 35%. That puts me at about like 33 cents per VE arrow. And 33 cents. All right, fine. I'll take it. I know there's folks that got 33x on the money because if they were early Velo, they got arrow at a penny. And arrow at a penny. Imagine that. That's why you got folks trying to offload their NFTs because they're sitting on 33x on the money. No, they're sitting on more because it's 60, 80%. Anyone who got arrow at a penny sitting on 84x on the money. So maybe it's kind of hard to not take those kinds of multiples. Um, that's a tough one. That's a lot of multiples. Um, move move pop back to 95 in an interesting zone. Let's go after the weekly. We're above the 100 and the 200, which is precarious support to say the least, but we're pinched because on the daily we're below the 100 and the 200. So this region between say 100 and 80 pretty precarious zone because but that is a nice downtrend. Look at that downtrend. We finally get reach below 80. God, we are waiting. We are patient. We understand what we're looking for. We just have to let it play out. Get that push below 80, and that's where the fireworks start to happen. So everything's noise to me. Maybe I'm the old guy in the room that is not too interested in war headlines. And I saw some interesting commentary of how folks are so emotional. I just back away and I focus on myself and my family, and I know that is the appropriate mentality. Now, if something the only thing I fear is something that takes me out of that mentality because that is not where I want to be. I want to be in this mentality where I can focus on these things and not these external unknowns because that's the stuff that'll drive you nuts. Gold was above 3,400 for a bit. Not that this chart looks like it's coming back down anytime soon. That's nice to see. Ethereum, nice pump on the day, 3.55%. Little dip on Bitcoin dominance. I mean, it'd be nice to see VEL get back to 10 cents. Never really thought VEL would go below 10 cents, but I don't know, that chart, it looks identical basically to Aerodrome. You got a very similar level of support that broke to the downside. This is a bit of an inverse head and shoulders. So we're back above the this green line. Now, Tweezy bottom's right about there. Double wick bottom on the weekly. That's interesting. Interesting structure here. So that decent confluence suggesting bottom. We're suggesting that this line in the sand at 5.17 cents, rather 5.04 cents, is pretty sturdy. Not the weakest line in the sand. It's a pretty decent line in the sand. Curve coming in at 63 cents. That's a lovely chart. Look at that. Right into the weekly 10. Sometimes you smack right into moving averages. That's just the way it is. I mean, these are cups basically. So you got one. This is a big cup and handle. I'm sorry, rather an inverse head and shoulders. Arguably, maybe this is components of a. No, that's not really a cup and handle. These are inverted head and shoulders, and there's about two of them in my opinion, and a nice support on the 10 SMA. This is a lovely chart. We're looking for probably in the short to midterm a breach of about 70 cents. That could be interesting. We want to get above that monthly 10, which we've interacted with one, two, and now a third time. So about 75 cents. You get above 75 cents as you start hanging out above 75 cents from where we are. And that should get interesting. What you want to see is the breakout, the retest, and the higher high. So you want to get about to 80 cents. You want to retest 75 cents from the top side, and then you want to push to 85, 90 cents. And that gives you your confluence suggesting a greater chance of continuation to the upside. Hope that helps. Well, that's about it. Nothing else too interesting in the news that caught my fancy, and that's interesting given that we're at war. That's just not the things that I focus on, and I don't think it's going to be too impactful on markets. Focus on your family, focus on yourself, focus on your mental well-being, mental stability, and obviously your knowledge and capacity to navigate and execute in these markets. That's much more important. If everyone took care of themselves, the world will be a better place. The problem is everyone's out there thinking about everyone else. Everyone's worried about what someone else thinks. Everyone's worried about the other guy and they being fair. And if everyone was fair and they did it for themselves, then the world would be a better place. Too many people out there worrying about other people's business. And that was really some of the founding fathers types of core argument, um, in my opinion. And that's something I think is universally applicable, whether it's to one's own individual philosophy or maybe even political philosophy. Um, Anywho, Heath, morning cap. The seas are looking clear. Why no llama NFT? I don't need to spend capital. It's okay. They're nice. They're very nice. Nice to have. You have extra capital. People like them. Just remember 20% is 20% is 20%. It doesn't matter what's paying you money. It's paying you money. Everything, anything that pays 30%, 30%, 30%. I guess how else am I supposed to state the point? Return is return. Um, it's curve ecosystem exposure. And in that regard, the only thing people really need to think about is excess or overexposure, which is overconcentration, not enough diversification. Whereas on the other hand, excess diversification is bad also. So it's not easy to have that balance. Killis, good morning. Greg, good morning, Cap. You have a tiny handful of people with genuine integrity. Thanks for all you do. Captain for CryptoZar. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. If anything, I'm consistent. I Nothing a flip flop, but it's just I have one track mind. I see the markets for what they are. Everything else is noise, and I set some ground rules. So all I did is set some ground rules, and I try and get people to focus on not just consistency, but reasonable. How do you make reasonable choices? By having reasonable rules. And if you have reasonable rules, you could stick to the rules. Make reasonable choices to adhere to your rules. That's all you need to be in this game of capital management is just consistent. Because once you find what works, you keep doing what works. And then you get to stop overthinking it. Because once you find what works, you don't need to think about other shit that doesn't work or potentially works. Because you already found out what works. And I found my three rules. Rule number one, rule number two, rule number three. Do I need to repeat them? I don't think so. And of course, our favorite is rule number three, which is complicated. We were looking at Arrow at an 84x on the money. How many folks probably run around with the original Velo airdrop at a penny? Folks got in early. Crypto fintech. Oh my. Peter, good morning. Much a pleasure. Yo, Maxie, good morning, Cap. Cap, did you see Coinbase announcement where they are integrating Aerodrome into their core app? Oh yeah, that's part of the marketing push. I Coinbase fees up and to the right because what are these fees? It's trading. Now, obviously, trading, the capacity to exchange dollar stablecoins to euro stablecoins so I can make a payment for some food at a coffee shop in Europe somewhere. Now that makes sense. Now that is how you live your life. That's how you execute something, a normal daily interaction. Now we all know that that is maybe the core of finance, but the world has become this gambling, speculative frenzy. So I expect Aerodrome and foreign exchange venues in these crypto markets to not just be used for buying coffee in one currency versus another. I probably am reasonable in saying I expect some downright disgusting, degenerate debauchery on Coinbase as normies realize that crypto is here. They sign up for a Coinbase account and they have the app on their phone and they're bored in the middle of the class, so they execute some trades on Aerodrome via their Coinbase app. So my general expectation is Coinbase fees up and to the right, base fees and volume up and to the right as normies and frankly boomers at some point start to deploy more and more and more and more capital to these crypto markets because these markets are prime for monetization. There's the market caps are microscopic. Get there. I mean, even so for a while, and I still say it is a relatively high market cap, but that is relative. Um, Aerodrome's market cap at this is probably what 600 mil, whatever the hell they're at. I don't know. I don't even need to look it up because it was four and change at like 60 cents. It's probably like 700 mil. All right. My general sentiment regarding what's the destination for market caps is boomer meme coins. And when I say boomer meme coins, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about United States stocks because they're meme coins. They don't do anything for you. They're just meme coins. And if they're not, because they're not all just meme coins, like obviously like stuff like Realty Income Corporation. I reference them a lot because, it's a total net lease REIT, and that's a decent product that generates revenue that gets distributed. The problem is they're fully monetized, and the share issuance has allowed their market cap to get to $50 billion, and their cash flow is 5.5%. So the point is, just a shit investment. It's not like you're gonna get 10x on the money and still be getting 5.5%. It's not going. It's Realty Income Corporation is not going to $500 billion or half a trillion dollar market cap. They're not going 10x on the money. So it is what it is, and they're only paying whatever the hell it is, 5, 6%, 5.5%. So the point is, capital flows to where it's treated best, and these crypto markets are where capital is and will continue to be treated best, where there's potential for 10x's on the money. And you're not getting 5%, you're getting 30% of the money. And you get 30% of the money after it goes 10x on the money. The potential monetization is extraordinary, and the potential growth of portfolios is extraordinary. And that's exactly uh, viral, what virality will spread. That kind of story, and that's what will lead to Coinbase fees up and to the right, and that's why Aerodrome's going to do what it's going to do. Listen, I always was hesitant, and I didn't want Aerodrome exposure because don't like the idea of buying something for one chain. Meanwhile, that's a bit hypocritical. I literally did that on Linnea and Mantle. Oh, now I did it on Base. I wasn't buy. Bear in mind that's a very interesting point. I didn't buy Aerodrome. I bought exposure to Base chain. I want exposure to those fees and that volume and revenue from that market. There's very few markets that I don't have exposure to. I mean, what like Barachain, or I don't know. I can't think of many markets that are important that I don't have exposure to. That's why there's a reason I don't have exposure to many markets because it's unnecessary. And if it was necessary to round off the portfolio, I probably would have had exposure to it already. And that's me and making my choice. You can't own everything, but if something's meaningful, you probably should have exposure to it. If I could take anything back, I'd probably take back Mantle. I think Linnea is. I wish I doubled down. I wish I put the Mantle back into Linnea, and that would have been cool. Nile on Linnea. I think that would have worked out better. I got the Arbitrum exposure, obviously the optimistic super chain, and I don't know, Velodrome is heading in the right direction in my opinion. Very exciting. We're back at 63 cents. Bitcoin 107.8. So didn't Sailor buy another billion this morning? Listen, the market's going to do what it's going to do, and people are going to have their opinions, but that's a heck of a chart. That is one heck of a chart. Um, Shit, even Nasdaq's up 2.44%. S&P up 2%. I want to see this move indicator roll over, and that's where things get weird. At least the 10 years is still below 4.5. Man, that's ugly. Look at it ride the monthly 100. Oh, this got to be painful from a Treasury Department. They got to finance everything they have to this year, and they're doing it at these kinds of interest rates. Oh man, they all wish they were at 1.25. Think the Linnea airdrop will be solid. What is it going to be? Is it going to be ARB or OP? Solid. It's got to be sold. Airdrop, people dumping airdrops left and right. Exactly what happened with like Stargate. You give someone something, they're gonna sell it for whatever they could get for it. I mean, don't they have the vote for the Stargate for the Layer Zero fee switch? Be interesting. I couldn't justify exposure to it. That was something to just capitalize on. I don't know what's gonna happen with Linnea, but of some of the smaller chains, because this is relatively low quantity of stablecoin slash dollars on Linnea. I like it because of the consensus narrative. That's a decent narrative. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with them. Let's take a look at some of the smaller tokens. I look at them on CoinGecko in my watch list. Arrow cranking out 16.3%. That's about it. Well, let's sort. So Spectra volume. Oh, look, Clio. Oh, back from the ashes, 10%. I would need like 20,000% for it to go back anywhere to where I bought it at. Guess I bought it at a premium. Where the hell is Liquidity? Coming in at 7.8%. Okay. I'd like to see that do a little bit better. Cleve coming in at 9, almost $10. All right, cool. Nile back at 50 cents. Nice to see. Tango. Oof. Goodness. 0.017. Let's just get it hit. All right. This is what it is. Oh, my little rational token, ARAT. All right. Anywho, that's about it for a Monday. I just wanted to get you guys up to speed, see what's going on. Keep your head straight. Don't watch news media too much. Don't worry about these. I don't want to. I don't like to talk politics too much. Protesting, not protesting. I think everyone thinks too much. I think everyone has too much going on here. I think people need to think less. I think people need to meditate more. I think people need to focus on themselves and their families more. I think people need to sit in a sauna more. People need to exercise more. I think people need to eat better, be healthier. I think I think most people's problem is they think about other people too much. Worry about yourself, your well-being, and your family. And that would make better society. That's my 2 cents. Anyhow, I don't mean to make anyone feel uncomfortable when I say things like that, like words of wisdom to cap off a stream. But that's my 2 cents. That's how I feel. I think people drive themselves mad. People are their own worst enemies. 12:47 p.m. Let's keep it short and sweet today. Thank you all for joining me. 130 people made it to the end of the stream and aren't now all that much more rational because of it. I wish you all a good one. I will see you guys and gals later this week, Wednesday. If not, we'll be back on Friday. Until then, be well. Peace.